Hey there, and welcome to CozySideAudio. Settle in with a soft-spoken story to help you relax, study, or drift into sleep. If you enjoy these gentle tales, tap like, share the calm, and subscribe for more cozy moments.
CozySideAudio presents Starborn Archive, Chapter 1, The Falling Star. The first time the sky broke open, Kaelen thought it was only thunder. He had been perched on the rusted roof of the orphanage again, legs dangling over the side, staring at constellations he only half remembered from tattered books. The stars were the one thing he could rely on, unchanging, unblinking, remote. But on that night, one of them moved. At first it was a shimmer, a bright bead trembling against the velvet black. Then it streaked downward, splitting the sky like a sword slash. The night roared with heat, clouds catching fire. The star wasn't falling, no, it was crashing, tearing through the firmament. The children inside were screaming before it even struck. Windows rattled, bricks shivered. Kaelen felt the shockwave in his ribs as the star slammed into the hills beyond the village, a blinding impact that painted the world white for a heartbeat. Then darkness snapped back, even deeper than before. He blinked, chest heaving. "That wasn't thunder," he muttered. A girl's voice came from the window behind him. "You think?" Kaelen glanced over his shoulder. Little Yara, 7, maybe 8, with hair like a nest of straw, peered out at him. Her eyes were wide, but her grin was wicked. She always grinned at the wrong times. "Back inside," Kaelen said. "Sister Marrow will skin you if she finds you out here." "She'll skin you first," Yara stuck out her tongue. "Roof's off limits." So's talking back. Yara huffed but withdrew. The window clapped shut. Kaelen turned back to the hills. Already, an unearthly glow pulsed from the crash site, a bruised shimmer of violet and silver. The air itself felt heavier, humming with a static charge. His arms prickled with goose flesh. Something had changed. By dawn, the world was already different. Villagers flocked to the crater, ignoring the officials who tried to cordon it off. The star had not burned away. It had shattered into fragments, jagged hunks of crystalline stone, each one faintly luminous, each thrumming like a heart. Birds refused to fly near them. Dogs howled and ran. Kaelen stood at the edge of the crater, dusty and sleepless, his mind full of half-formed wonder. "That's no ordinary rock," muttered old Fen, a farmer whose beard was longer than his temper. "Smells of sorcery." Kaelen almost laughed until he realized he could smell it too. The fragments gave off not heat, not smoke, but a scent like ozone and iron. And something more, a pull, a whisper. He felt it tugging at his ribs, like the crash had left a hook inside him. His fingertips twitched. The fragments seemed to sing in a language he couldn't know but almost understood. When the explosion came, it wasn't from the star, it was from the people. It began with a child, barely older than Yara. The boy touched a fragment with awe instead of fear. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then his skin glowed, traced with lines of light, an intricate shape sprawling across his arm. The crowd gasped. The lines formed a constellation. "Orion," someone whispered. The boy flexed his fingers and the ground cracked at his feet. A raw force pulsed outward, tossing men like straw dolls. Chaos erupted. Villagers screamed, scrambling away from the crater. Guards rushed in, shouting orders no one obeyed. Kaelen didn't move. He couldn't. His chest felt like it was splitting. That same light, that same shape, burned under his skin. Not Orion. Not anything he recognized. It writhed, unstable, unfinished. And then he collapsed. He woke in darkness. The infirmary smelled of herbs and damp cloth. Candles flickered on a nearby table. His limbs ached, every muscle tight with exhaustion. Sister Marrow sat beside him, arms folded. She was a severe woman, thin as a whip, eyes sharp enough to slice bread. "You frightened us." Kaelen swallowed. "What happened?" "You tell me." She leaned closer. "They found you at the crater, glowing like a hearth. Then you went limp. You've been unconscious for half a day." Kaelen tried to sit up but hissed as pain lanced through him. The star fragments. They did something. To me. Her expression flickered just for an instant. You're not the only one. What do you mean? Others touch them. Some bear marks now. Strange patterns, shapes in the skin. They can do things. She hesitated on the last words as if unwilling to say them. Strength, fire, sight beyond sight. The priests are calling them star signatures. Kaelen looked at his hands. They were trembling. His skin looked ordinary, but he remembered the burn of light beneath it, the half-born shape twisting like it couldn't decide what to be. I don't understand mine, he admitted softly. Good. Sister Marrow straightened. Keep it that way. He blinked. What? You're an orphan, Kaelen. The world is already stacked against you. Don't go flaunting power you can't control. Nothing good will come of it. Kaelen wanted to argue, but he saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear for him, fear of him. That hurt worse than the aches in his body. That night, sleep refused him. He climbed back onto the roof, ignoring the ache in his ribs. The stars overhead seemed closer, brighter, and wrong. Some patterns had shifted. The constellations no longer matched the diagrams in the old books. Orion's belt had stretched. Draco coiled tighter around the pole. Virgo's outline glowed with new sharpness. It was as if the sky itself was responding to what had fallen. You feel it too. Kaelen startled. Yara had scrambled up beside him again, grinning despite the chill wind. You shouldn't be here, Kaelen muttered. You shouldn't either. He almost smiled. Yara's grin faded. She tilted her head, peering at him. You were glowing. Kaelen looked away. You shouldn't have seen that. I see lots of things. The others, they're scared of you. Even Sister Marrow. But I'm not. You should be. Yara snorted. You always say scary things, but you never scare me. You're just Kaelen. Something inside him loosened at that. They sat in silence, staring at the fractured sky. After a while, Yara whispered, Do you think more stars will fall? Kaelen thought of the light burning under his skin, the whispering fragments, the tug in his ribs that had not gone away. Yes, he said, I think this is only the beginning. And far away in the Academy of Polaris, bells began to toll. Chapter 2. The Orphan and the Invitation. Kaelen woke to bells. Not the usual cracked church bells of the village, but something deeper, more commanding, rolling across the hills like thunder. Each note vibrated in his bones. He stumbled from bed, still sore, and found the orphanage in chaos. Children darted through corridors in nightclothes, whispering, laughing, crying. Sister Marrow strode among them like a storm cloud, snapping orders that no one obeyed. What's happening? Kaelen asked, catching her arm. The Academy, she said curtly. Polaris? Her jaw tightened. They've sent an envoy. Kaelen blinked. Here? Sister Marrow gave him a look sharp enough to draw blood. Do not speak unless spoken to. And saints help me. Do not show them anything. Then she pushed him aside and marched toward the courtyard. The envoy of Polaris Academy was not what Kaelen expected. He had imagined scholars in robes, parchment, and ink-stained fingers. Instead, 6 figures dismounted gleaming horses, each armored in dark silver that shimmered faintly under the sun. Their cloaks were embroidered with constellations, threads of starlight that shifted when Kaelen blinked. At their head was a woman, tall enough to look down on most men. Her hair was shorn close, her eyes a cool steel gray. Across her cheek glowed faint lines, her signature permanent and proud. Sister Marrow bowed stiffly. Mistress Envoy, spare me courtesies. The woman's voice carried like a blade through air. We come for the marked. A murmur ran through the orphans. Some shrank back, clutching their sleeves. Others, braver or more foolish, tugged at collars to show faint glowing patterns. Since the stars fall, more than a dozen of the children bore strange marks. Some could light candles with a thought. Some could bend spoons. Some only twitched when the moon rose. The envoy's eyes swept swept over them with detached calculation. Polaris Academy accepts them. All of them. Gasps broke out. One boy whispered, "We get to go?" Another hissed, "We'll be heroes." Kaelen said nothing. He kept his arms folded, hiding his hands. The envoy's gaze landed on him anyway. Those gray eyes narrowed. "You," she said. Kaelen froze. "You bear a signature." Sister Marrow stepped forward quickly. "He is unstable, dangerous, perhaps not suitable." The envoy raised a hand, silencing her. "All who carry the starlight are suitable, some more than others." Kaelen's pulse thundered. He wanted to speak, to deny, but he saw no use. The envoy's stare pierced too deep. "You will come," she said simply. That evening, the orphans gathered what little they had. Some were giddy, some trembling. Yara clung to Kaelen's side, though she had no mark. "I don't want you to go," she said fiercely. "You'll be fine." "No, I won't. They'll make you into something else, something not Kaelen." He crouched, gripping her shoulders. "Listen, whatever happens, I'll come back, I swear it." Her eyes shimmered. "Promise?" "I promise." They held each other a moment longer. Then the envoy's horn sounded and Kaelen forced himself to let go. The journey to Polaris was 3 days by horse and wagon. The envoys allowed little talk, but the children buzzed anyway, comparing marks and daring each other to show off. A boy with Sagittarius's bow conjured phantom arrows. A girl with Virgo coaxed bruises to fade from her skin. Kaelen stayed quiet. At night, he dreamed of stars. Not steady constellations, but fragments spinning in blackness, shards of light tearing through him. The unstable shape burned under his ribs, writhing, incomplete. Each time he woke, sweating, gasping, the glow fading from his skin. On the third dawn, the mountains parted, and Polaris Academy rose before them. It was not a castle, nor a school, as Kaelen had imagined. It was a citadel of glass and stone, spires rising like frozen flames, walls etched with constellations that shifted as clouds passed overhead. A wide stair led to gates taller than any church tower. Beyond, Kaelen glimpsed courtyards where students in uniform sparred with glowing weapons, or bent light into shields, or vanished entirely. The air itself shimmered with power. "Welcome," said the envoy, her voice softer now, almost reverent, "to Polaris Academy, the archive of heaven, the place where your starlight will be shaped." Kaelen's throat was dry. The gates opened. Inside, the new recruits were herded into the Hall of Resonance. Vast pillars held up a dome painted with shifting stars. At the center lay a basin of dark glass, its surface rippling though untouched. "Step forward one by one," commanded a robed instructor. "The basin will record your signature. Your constellation shall be known." Excited whispers broke out. Children shoved each other forward. The boy with Sagittarius touched the basin first. His mark flared, a bow gleaming across his arm. The basin glowed, projecting a radiant outline of the archer above him. "Confirmed. Sagittarius," the instructor intoned. The girl with Virgo followed, then another with Leo. Each time the basin shone, matching mark to constellation. Then Kaelen's turn came. He stepped forward, heart pounding. His reflection trembled on the glassy surface. Slowly, he pressed his palm down. Pain, a flash of searing cold, then heat. Light burst from his skin, the unstable shape writhing. The basin shuddered, dark glass cracking at the edges. Above him, the stars flared, then warped. A half-formed constellation flickered, twisting, splitting, refusing to hold shape. Fragments of Virgo, shards of Draco, streaks of unknown points no one recognized. Gasps erupted. "Incomplete," murmured one instructor. "Corrupted," hissed another. The envoy's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Kaelen snatched his hand back. The basin went dark, smoking faintly. His chest ached, as if something inside had been scraped raw. The instructor's voice was cold. "Unregistered signature, undefined, dangerous." Kaelen stood frozen, humiliated. Whispers spread like wildfire. Broken. Wrong. Not even real. And in the shadows of the hall, another student watched him with interest. A tall boy with sharp eyes, his skin traced by the coiling mark of a dragon. Riven Draco smiled. Chapter 3. Arrival at Polaris Academy. The gates of Polaris swallowed them whole. Kaelen had expected the inside of the citadel to be grand, but grandeur wasn't the right word. It wasn't just big, it was alive. Every wall pulsed faintly with starlight, carved glyphs humming with quiet resonance. Pathways wound like constellations themselves, forming patterns you could only see from high above. Glass spires refracted sunlight into rainbow shards that painted the courtyards in shifting colors. Even the air seemed different, crisp and charged, as if every breath carried fragments of the sky. The recruits gawked openly. Kaelen tried not to, but his neck ached from looking up too much. Riven didn't gawk. The boy walked with a predator's ease, sharp-eyed and tall for his age, his dragon-shaped signature curling over his collarbone like living ink. When Kaelen had stumbled from the Hall of Resonance, raw from humiliation, Riven had been watching him, not mocking, not whispering like the others, but studying. And somehow that was worse. Now, entering the academy, Riven walked near him again, silent, smiling faintly, as if he already knew something Kaelen didn't. They were herded into the orientation hall, a chamber big enough to hold a village. Banners of the constellations hung from the rafters, Leo roaring, Virgo radiant, Scorpio coiled and waiting. Beneath them, instructors in silver-lined uniforms surveyed the new arrivals like falcons. A man with a voice like rolling gravel strode to the front. He wore no cloak, no insignia, only a simple coat, but the mark of his signature blazed across his bald head, a constellation Kaelen didn't recognize. "I am Warden Saul," he said. "Some of you will come to hate me. Some of you will never stop fearing me. All of you will obey me." That silenced the last of the whispers. "Polaris Academy is not a school," Saul continued. "It is a crucible. You are here because the stars chose you. Some of you will master your gifts. Some will be mastered by them. And some will not leave at all." Gasps. A few pale faces. Saul's eyes swept the crowd like searchlights. "You will train. You will bleed. You will be broken. And if you endure, you will emerge Starborn, defenders of humanity, guardians of heaven's fire. If you fail, you will be forgotten." The hall was utterly still. Then Saul barked, "Dorm assignments." Instructors moved among the recruits, handing out slips marked with constellations. Kaelen received a card stamped with a single star and the name Orion House. The dormitory was less like a barracks and more like a cathedral. Beds lined a chamber of stone and glass, with arched windows showing the endless sky. A faint shimmer of light marked the threshold. Protection wards, Kaelen guessed. He dropped his small bag on a lower bunk, ignoring the curious stares from other recruits. Word of his broken signature had spread faster than fire and straw. "Orion, huh?" The voice was light, almost musical. A girl flopped onto the bunk opposite his, swinging her legs. Her dark curls were a tangled halo, her grin broad. The faint mark of Virgo traced her neck, glowing like embroidery. "I'm Lyra," she said, holding out a hand. "Virgo signature. Healer, occasional singer, frequent troublemaker." Kaelen hesitated, then shook. "Kaelen." "Ah, the mysterious unregistered." Lyra winked. "Half the dorm's buzzing about you. Don't worry, I'm not scared." "You should be. That's what scary people always say. Usually right before they trip on stairs." Against his will, Kaelen smirked. A tall boy with sharp cheekbones dropped onto a top bunk nearby. He twirled a pen between his fingers with unnerving precision. The mark of Libra shone faintly on his wrist. "Don't encourage him," the boy said dryly. "If the basin cracked from his touch, he's either cursed or cursed twice." "Don't be rude, Cassian." Lyra threw a pillow at him. Cassian caught it without looking, balancing it on one finger. Observation isn't rudeness, it's survival. He turned his cool gaze on Kaelen. Libra's signature. Strategy, balance. You'll find me useful if you live long enough. Kaelen arched a brow. And if I don't? Then you'll be one less liability. Cassian lay back, shutting his eyes. Lyra groaned. Ignore him. He's always like that. That evening, the new recruits were led to the dining hall. It was a cavernous space under a dome of shifting constellations, the ceiling itself alive with stars. Platters of food floated to long tables, meats Kaelen had never tasted, fruits that glowed faintly. Students grouped by their houses, already forming cliques. Some boasted loudly about their powers, sparking flames or conjuring blades to impress. Others eyed the competition warily, silent but calculating. Kaelen kept his head down. He felt eyes on him anyway. Unregistered, broken. The whispers clung to him like smoke. Until a shadow fell over the table. Riven Draco stood there, tray in hand, smile cool. His dragon mark shimmered faintly with each breath. Orion House, he said smoothly. Mind if I join? Lyra blinked. You're Draco, aren't you? Shouldn't you be with... I go where I please. Riven slid into the seat across from Kaelen without waiting for permission. He studied him like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. So, Riven said, the boy with no constellation must be lonely. Kaelen met his gaze evenly. I'm managing. Are you? Riven leaned forward. Because I saw the basin. You didn't break it. It was afraid of you. Lyra's fork clattered. Cassian opened one eye, interest flickering. Kaelen kept his voice level. What do you want, Draco? Riven smiled wider, but his eyes stayed cold. Only to see how long before you unravel. Some threads snap quickly, some bind the whole tapestry. He rose and left without another word. Kaelen's food turned to ash in his mouth. That night, lying awake under shifting starlight, Kaelen whispered to himself, I will not unravel. But his chest burned with the same unstable glow, and in his dreams the stars whispered otherwise. Chapter 4. The Rival, Draco Ascends. The first time Kaelen saw Riven fight, he understood why everyone whispered his name like it was already legend. The occasion was the initiation spars, a tradition that came 3 days after arrival. Warden Saul called it a practical introduction to humility, which meant throwing untested recruits into duels while the entire academy watched. Victory is irrelevant, Saul had barked that morning. What matters is resolve, control. If you collapse, you fail. If you hesitate, you fail. If you lose control, you will wish you had failed. The recruits laughed nervously. Kaelen hadn't laughed at all. His chest still burned each night with the half-born signature he couldn't name, and he dreaded what would happen if he had to draw on it. But Riven Draco didn't dread anything. The training arena was carved into the mountain itself, a coliseum of stone, where the sky showed only as a jagged slice overhead. Students filled the tiers, cheering and jeering as names were called. Cassian Orion against Mira Scorpio. The first duel was quick. Cassian parried every strike with precise counters, wearing his opponent down until she surrendered, furious. Lyra clapped loudly. Cassian only shrugged, eyes already analyzing the next match. Lyra Virgo against Darren Leo. That was chaos, Darren roared, flames bursting from his fists, while Lyra darted around, healing burns as fast as they came, laughing breathlessly until she caught him off balance and tripped him into the dust. She bowed with exaggerated flourish. And then, Riven Draco. The arena fell strangely quiet. His opponent, a stocky boy from Taurus House, squared his shoulders trying to look braver than he felt. Riven stepped onto the sand with the calm of a man entering his own garden. His dragon mark glowed, scales of light tracing his arms and jaw. Warden Saul dropped his hand. Begin. The boy from Taurus charged, summoning a spectral bull's head that lowered horns and bellowed. He drove forward with raw force, straight into Riven's waiting smile. Riven raised one hand. The dragon coiled from his skin in shimmering brilliance, wrapping his arm, jaws opening wide. He caught the bull's charge as if it were a child's toy, twisted, and flung the boy across the arena with terrifying ease. Gasps, cheers. The boy staggered up, dazed, and tried again. This time, Riven didn't even move from his spot. He traced a shape in the air, and starlight bent around him, forming the silhouette of a dragon that snapped forward with lethal precision. The boy dropped instantly, unconscious. Silence. Then, an eruption of noise. "Draco, did you see that?" "Saints above." Riven bowed with a courtier's grace, every movement controlled, elegant. When his eyes flicked up to the stands, they landed, inevitably, on Kaelen. And he smiled. Not cruel, not mocking. A smile that said, "This is what you're standing against." Later in the mess hall, Lyra was still buzzing. "Did you see him? He moved like poetry with teeth. I've never seen control like that, not even the instructors move that clean." Cassian rolled his eyes. "Don't swoon. Yes, he's powerful. He's also dangerous." "That's kind of the point," Lyra shot back. "If you're not dangerous, you're dead." Kaelen stayed quiet, pushing food around his plate. Lyra caught it. "What about you, Kael? You watched him, didn't you?" Kaelen's jaw tightened. "He's good." "Good?" Lyra laughed. "He's terrifying." "Exactly," Cassian said softly. "And terrifying men rarely stop at winning duels." Kaelen found Riven waiting for him that night. He was leaning against the arch of Orion House's doorway, as if it were his own room. The wards of the dormitory shimmered faintly against his shoulder, but he didn't seem bothered. "You're avoiding me," Riven said casually. Kaelen scowled. "Maybe I enjoy peace." Riven chuckled. "Peace is an illusion. Polaris will teach you that soon enough." "What do you want, Draco?" "I want to understand." Riven stepped closer, voice low. "The basin rejected you, but it feared you. You have something none of the others do. Something not bound by the Archive's rules." Kaelen stiffened. "You don't know anything about me." Riven's eyes gleamed. "Don't I? I know that people like us don't fit into cages. They'll try, of course, Saul, the instructors, even your new friends. They'll bind you in their constellations, make you dance like trained animals. But you and I..." He leaned in, voice almost a whisper. "We were born to unmake cages." The word sent a chill down Kaelen's spine. He stepped back, fists clenched. "Stay away from me." Riven smiled again, soft and patient, as if Kaelen had said exactly what he expected. "You'll see it, eventually. The stars are chains, Kael, and I intend to break them." With that, he melted into the shadows, leaving Kaelen with the burn of his own unstable light flaring in his chest. Sleep was impossible. Kaelen lay staring at the ceiling, listening to Lyra's gentle snores, Cassian's steady breathing. Outside, the constellations shifted unnaturally again, points of light bending in ways no book had ever described. He pressed a hand to his chest, his signature stirred, writhing, unfinished. Not Draco, not Virgo, not Libra, not any of the 24. Something else. Something that made even the stars themselves uneasy. And for the first time, Kaelen wondered if Riven was right. Chapter 5. The First Trial, the Constellation Gauntlet. The Academy didn't waste time. 3 mornings after the initiation spars, Warden Saul marched the recruits into the mountain's belly. Torches sputtered along the walls, throwing shadows across the carved constellations. The air smelled of stone dust and something metallic, like blood. "You've sparred. You've postured," Saul growled. "Now you survive." The hall opened onto a colossal chamber, an underground dome so vast Kaelen almost believed they had stepped outdoors again. The ceiling glittered with embedded crystals, arranged in the shapes of constellations. Valleys, rivers, and jagged terrain stretched before them, a battlefield crafted by the stars themselves. Lyra let out a low whistle. "That's not ominous at all." Cassian adjusted his collar, eyes darting, calculating. "It's a controlled environment, a gauntlet. They'll release challenges mapped to the constellations above." "Correct," Saul said, as if he'd heard. His voice rolled across the chamber. "Each house will navigate the gauntlet, reaching the central spire before the others. Trials are bound to the constellations. Some test strength, some wit, some resolve. Fail, and you may walk out broken, or not at all." A ripple of unease swept through the recruits. Saul's eyes glinted. Begin. The floor shuddered, crystals flared, and the gauntlet awoke. Orion House moved as a unit. Lyra bounced on her toes, scanning for injuries before any had even happened. Cassian walked at the center, muttering strategies like prayers. Kaelen kept pace beside them, chest tight, wary of the unstable glow under his ribs. The first trial struck swiftly. The ground ahead cracked, splitting open into jagged trenches. From the darkness below, shapes crawled out, shadowy beasts with flickering star eyes, their bodies limbed in Scorpio's stinger shape. Manifested signatures, Cassian said sharply. They'll mimic constellation beasts. Don't let them sting. On it, Lyra cried. She grabbed a stone, breathed, and her Virgo mark flared, healing energy bursting into a flash that blinded the nearest scorpion long enough for Cassian to strike. Cassian's Libra. Signature sharpened his movements, every step balanced, every strike precise. He slid past claws and drove his blade into the creature's eye. Kaelen hesitated. His chest burned. He tried to summon the shape, but it only writhed, unstable, dangerous. Not here, not now. A scorpion lunged for him. He dodged barely in time, tripping over rubble. Its stinger crashed down. A dragon's roar split the air. The beast dissolved into starlight before it could strike. Riven Draco strode past, his dragon mark blazing, claws of light still glowing from the kill. He didn't even look at Kaelen. Keep up, he called coolly, his teammates surging behind him. Draco House moved like a storm, cutting a swath through the gauntlet. Kaelen clenched his fists, heat flaring beneath his skin. The gauntlet twisted deeper. They crossed bridges of light, fought through mists that whispered lies and familiar voices, scaled walls that shifted beneath their feet. At one point, a Sagittarius archer from another house took aim at Orion's group, phantom arrow shimmering. Cassian shouted a warning, but Kaelen moved without thinking. He raised his arm, the unstable signature flared. For an instant, stars erupted around him, constellations flickering like a broken lantern. The arrow shattered midair, scattering into harmless sparks. But so did the ground beneath them. Stone fractured outward in a wild burst. Lyra stumbled, nearly tumbling into a pit before Kaelen caught her wrist. Her eyes widened. Kael, what was that? He couldn't answer. Behind them, Riven's laugh echoed, smooth and cutting. Unstable indeed. Hours blurred. Sweat, bruises, endless trials. Orion House pushed through by grit and stubbornness. Cassian's strategies kept them alive. Lyra's healing dragged them from collapse. Kaelen fought with fists and fury, terrified of calling on the light again. At last, the central spire loomed ahead, glowing like a pillar of heaven. But Draco House stood before it. Riven waited at the foot of the spire, dragon coiled around him, smirk sharp as steel. You're late. We're not racing you, Cassian said evenly. Riven tilted his head. Everything here is a race, and some of us are born ahead. Without warning, the ground cracked again. A colossal beast surged upward, the embodiment of Draco itself, wings of fire, scales of starlight. The final trial. Chaos erupted. Houses screamed, scattering. The dragon beast lashed its tail, sending students flying. Kaelen's chest burned white-hot. The unstable signature writhed, begging to be unleashed. He looked at Lyra, who was already sprinting toward fallen recruits, and Cassian, shouting orders through the chaos. Then at Riven, who walked calmly toward the dragon, hand outstretched. His mark blazed. The beast paused, then bowed. Gasps rippled through the recruits. The dragon knelt before Riven Draco as though he were its master. Riven turned, eyes glittering, a king before his court. You see? Even the stars themselves remember who rules them. Cheers, fear, awe. And Kaelen, standing in the dust, felt something inside him twist tighter, more unstable than ever. When it was over, Warden Saul declared Draco House victors. Orion had survived, barely, but the shadow of Riven's triumph loomed larger than the spire itself. That night, as Kaelen lay bruised and sleepless, he heard the whispers echo through the dorms. Draco ascends. Draco commands. Draco is the future. And all Kaelen could think was, if the stars kneel to him, what am I supposed to do? Chapter 6. Shadows in the Archives. The Academy quieted after the gauntlet, but it was not peace. Every hallway Kaelen walked down whispered the same words. Draco, unstoppable, chosen. Even recruits who had once sneered at Riven now spoke his name with reverence or fear. Orion House survived the trial, but only barely, and the shadow of Riven's triumph followed them like a curse. Lyra tried to spin it brighter. Second place isn't bad for our first run. Besides, we saved more students than anyone else. That counts for something. Not in their eyes, Cassian said grimly, watching recruits bow their heads as Riven passed in the dining hall, his every step measured, confident. Kaelen said nothing. His chest still ached from the unstable eruption. Each time he thought of the sparks scattering across the battlefield, of Lyra's startled face, he wanted to claw the light out of himself, but he couldn't. And worse, he kept hearing Riven's voice. The stars are chains. I intend to break them. That night, Kaelen couldn't sleep. He wandered the Academy's carved corridors until he reached the Hall of Archives. Most recruits didn't even know it existed. A spiral stair sank below the library into cool, silent stone. Torches burned low, casting long shadows over shelves upon shelves of tomes and tablets. Some looked new. Others so ancient they might have been carved when the stars first fell. Kaelen ran his fingers over the spines. Each bore the name of a signature: Leo, Andromeda, Sagittarius, Hydra. Records of how they manifested, the lives of those who bore them, their limits and rules. But when he searched for his brother's name, he found nothing. Joran's signature, or whatever had killed him, had been erased. Kaelen's pulse quickened. He searched again, frantic. Nothing. Not even a record of Joran's existence at Polaris. Looking for ghosts? Kaelen spun, fists raised. A girl stood at the end of the aisle, half hidden in shadow. Pale hair braided tight, eyes sharp as obsidian. He recognized her. Ilara from House Serpentis, quiet, dangerous. She had barely spoken since the initiation. Kaelen lowered his fist slowly. What are you doing here? Her lips twitched. The same thing as you, I imagine. Searching for what the Academy wants forgotten. She slid a book from the shelf and tossed it toward him. He caught it, frowning. Its cover bore no name, only the etched outline of a shattered star. What is this? Ilara's voice dropped to a whisper. Records of those who didn't fit. The ones who broke the archive's rules. Kaelen's stomach tightened. He opened the book. Pages filled with sketches and half-burned notes, recruits with unstable or non-existent signatures. Accidents, deaths, disappearances. His eyes caught a fragment. Subject J, unclassified anomaly. Containment failed. Expunged. J, his brother. Kaelen's throat went dry. Why would they hide this? Because the archive is a cage, Ilara said softly. It pretends to name every star. But what happens when one doesn't fit? They erase it. Pretend it never existed. Kaelen thought of his own unstable power writhing under his skin. He snapped the book shut. They'll erase me too. Ilara studied him. Unless you learn why. Unless you uncover the true archive. He frowned. True archive? But before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall. Warden Saul's voice carried like iron. Ilara, Kaelen. They froze. Saul's shadow stretched across the shelves before he appeared, eyes like twin flames. This wing is forbidden, he said quietly. Too quietly. Knowledge unearned is poison. You both know the penalty. Ilara slipped back into shadow, vanishing as if she had never been. Kaelen stood frozen, book clutched in his hands. Saul's gaze pinned him. Return to your dorm. Forget what you saw. Kaelen forced his voice steady. And if I can't? Saul stepped closer until Kaelen could see the scars running across his temple, faint but deep. then you will not survive this academy. Back in Orion House, Kaelen lay awake, the stolen book hidden under his mattress. His brother's name erased. The word unclassified anomaly, the whisper of a true archive. Lyra stirred in her sleep. Cassian muttered something about balance. The ordinary sounds of allies, of friends. Kaelen stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. If the Academy lied about his brother, what else had they buried in shadow? And why did it feel like Riven Draco already knew the answers? Chapter 7 House Wars. It started with whispers, as most wars do. The Gauntlet had crowned Draco, and now every hall echoed with the sound of their victory. Riven moved like a sovereign through the Academy, his house trailing in his wake, sharp smiles, sharper blades, and the certainty of power. But whispers hardened into lines drawn across corridors. Meals became tense, glances sharpened into threats. Soon, house pride gave way to ambushes in shadowed courtyards, sabotage in training arenas, and a new word murmured through the dormitories: war. Orion House tried to keep to themselves. Lyra worked longer hours in the infirmary, patching up bruised recruits from rival skirmishes. Cassian brokered tense truces wherever he could, his Libra mark glowing faintly as he soothed tempers. Kaelen tried to stay invisible. But invisibility rarely lasts. The ambush came after dusk. Kaelen had gone to the practice yard alone, fists aching for something solid after the archives. He hit the post until his knuckles bled, breath fogging in the cold. Training without a signature? The voice dripped disdain. 3 recruits stepped from the shadows, House Centauri. Their marks gleamed faintly. The archer, the horse, the circle of the bow. Looks like the rumors are true, their leader sneered. Orion's Starboy doesn't even shine. Kaelen flexed his fists. He should walk away. Cassian would tell him to. Lyra would beg him to. But something hot and restless burned in him. He thought of the archives, of Joran erased, of Saul's warning, and of Riven, the stars bowing to him. Want to test that? Kaelen asked. The Centauri recruit smirked. Gladly. They struck at once. Phantom arrows whistled through the air. Hooves of light thundered toward him. Kaelen dodged, fists raised, but the world blurred, his chest seared. The unstable signature ripped out of him. Stars burst in a violent spiral, constellations flickering in and out like broken lanterns. The ground cracked. The Centauri recruits stumbled, blinded, weapons dissolving into starlight. One screamed as rubble pinned his leg. When it ended, silence reigned. Kaelen stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, the training yard shattered. The Centauri leader's face twisted from arrogance into fear. Monster, he hissed, dragging his injured comrade away. By morning, everyone knew. Orion House gathered at their table in the dining hall, recruits staring, pointing. You lost control? Cassian said flatly. His voice wasn't cruel, just cold. They'll call for punishment. I didn't, Kaelen began, but stopped. Because he had. Lyra set her jaw. He saved himself, that's not a crime. It is here, Cassian said. Polaris doesn't forgive instability, you know that. Across the hall, Riven rose from his seat. Silence fell like a blade. He strolled toward Orion's table, dragon mark glowing faintly under his collar. Quite the spectacle last night, Riven said smoothly. His eyes locked on Kaelen. You're making it hard for me to keep your secret. Kaelen stiffened. What secret? Riven leaned closer, voice silk and venom. That you don't belong to any constellation. That you're an error. A mistake. The hall buzzed with whispers. Kaelen's fists clenched, unstable heat rising again, but Riven only smiled, patted his shoulder, and turned away. Careful, Kael, he murmured as he left. Wars are won with perception as much as with power, and you're losing both. The first real clash erupted that night. Centauri struck Orion in the dormitory courtyard, fueled by revenge. Arrows of light rained, phantom steeds trampled. Lyra screamed orders, dragging recruits behind cover, her healing flaring as arrows found flesh. Kaelen moved like a dancer, every strike precise, knocking blades aside, balancing the chaos. Kaelen fought like a storm. He didn't call the light. He used his fists, his anger, his stubborn refusal to kneel. He broke through Centauri's lines, hauling Orion recruits out of danger, refusing to let the unstable power loose, until he nearly snapped under the weight. Then Riven appeared. Not to fight, to watch. He stood in the shadows, dragon flaring faintly, eyes gleaming as Orion and Centauri tore each other apart. And Kaelen realized with a sick twist of his gut, this wasn't random violence. This was orchestration. When the Wardens finally broke the battle apart, dragging bloodied recruits to the infirmary, Kaelen caught Riven's smile across the courtyard. Not the smile of a rival, the smile of a puppeteer. Chapter 8. Fault Lines. The courtyard still smelled of smoke. Kaelen sat on the edge of a fountain, knuckles raw, bandages stiff with half-dried blood. Around him, Orion House was silent. Too silent. Lyra busied herself with a poultice, though her hands shook. Kaelen leaned against the wall, arms crossed, gaze hard as flint. The younger recruits whispered, stealing glances at Kaelen as if he might explode again. He wanted to scream that he wasn't a threat, that he wasn't dangerous, that he hadn't asked for the chaos inside him. Instead, he clenched his fists until the bandages seeped red. Kaelen broke the silence. This isn't working. Lyra's head snapped up. Don't start. We can't keep pretending, Kaelen said evenly. He's unstable. He's putting the whole house at risk. Kaelen rose. Say it to me, not to her. Cassian's Libra mark glowed faintly, scales shifting across his skin. I am saying it to you. Do you know what the Centauri are calling you now? The fracture? They think you're cursed, and maybe they're right. Lyra slammed the poultice down. Enough! He saved us. You'd all be in the infirmary, or worse, if he hadn't fought back. Cassian's jaw tightened. Saving us doesn't matter if he brings the Wardens down on us, or if his power kills us next time. The younger recruits nodded uneasily. One muttered, maybe Draco's right. Kaelen froze. What did you say? The recruit paled but stammered on. He said you're not part of the archive, that you're not real. Heat surged in Kaelen's chest. Stars flickered at the edge of his vision, unstable, hungry. He forced them down with sheer will, knuckles white. Get out, he rasped. The recruit fled. That night, Kaelen couldn't stay in the dorm. He wandered through the academy until the walls opened into the sky. Constellations burned overhead, cold and distant. He wondered which one had been meant for him, or if none had. You burn loud, a voice murmured. Kaelen turned. Alara stood at the edge of the roof, pale hair catching starlight. She looked at him as though she'd been expecting him. Your house fears you, she said softly. Not cruel, not mocking, just fact. Kaelen exhaled bitterly. Tell me something I don't know. They should, Alara added. Not because you're dangerous, but because you don't fit their rules, and people fear what doesn't fit. Her eyes were strange, shadowed, fathomless. The archive is a lie. The constellations are only the surface. Beneath them, something older waits. Something the Academy would kill to keep hidden. Kaelen's breath caught. The true archive. Alara inclined her head. And you, fractured or not, you're proof of it. Kaelen's fist tightened. Then why does Riven know more than me? She almost smiled. Because he's already chosen a side. Before Kaelen could ask what she meant, the sky lit with red flares. Alarm bells clanged across the academy. House banners unfurled from the towers. War cries echoed through the night. The house wars had stopped being whispers. They had erupted into open siege. Back in Orion's dormitory, recruits scrambled for weapons. Kaelen barked orders, trying to organize defense lines. Lyra sprinted from cot to cot, throwing starlight into wounded recruits brought in from skirmishes already raging. Kaelen burst through the door, breathless. They've come for us. Centauri, Draco, maybe more. Cassian turned, eyes flaring. Good. Then we fight. Kaelen froze. Cassian wasn't calm anymore. He wasn't balanced. He looked like someone who'd been waiting for this excuse. Lyra caught Kaelen's arm. Stay with me. Don't lose control. But outside, the academy thundered with war. The courtyard filled with blazing signatures, phantom beasts, storms of arrows, flames that roared like lions. Kaelen's unstable power surged, begging to join. The house he was supposed to belong to stood on the edge of breaking apart. And in the chaos, he caught a glimpse of Riven Draco across the courtyard, watching the siege with that same quiet, terrible smile. Chapter 9: Siege Fire. The first impact shook the stone walls of Polaris Academy like thunder. Kaelen gripped the window ledge as red flares streaked through the night sky, bursting into trails that marked enemy positions. Across the courtyards, House Centauri poured through the gates in waves, signatures blazing. Phantom horses trampled the earth, arrows of light rained, banners snapped in the wind. And at their center, Draco's dragon mark coiled like fire. They've united, Cassian said grimly, buckling his gauntlets. Centauri and Draco together. Lyra's face went pale. That's half the academy. We'll be outnumbered 3-1. The Orion recruits murmured fearfully, hands tightening around weapons. Kaelen stepped forward before the doubt could spread. His voice came rough but steady. Then we make them bleed for every step. Cassian shot him a sharp glance, but didn't argue. Positions. Shields at the courtyard steps. Archers at the balconies. Lyra, stay behind the line. Lyra scowled. Don't you dare sideline me. But already, the first wave hit. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Phantom steeds of starlight smashed into Orion's front rank, scattering shields. Recruits screamed as Centauri arrows pinned them to the ground. Kaelen dove into the fray. He fought not with his unstable signature. He couldn't risk another fracture, but with fists and grit. He ducked under a glowing spear, slammed an elbow into a Centauri's jaw, ripped the weapon from their grip and turned it back. Cassian moved beside him, precise as a blade, Libra mark flaring with every strike. His balance disrupted enemies mid-swing, sending them stumbling into each other. Keep the line, Cassian roared. Lyra darted behind the barricade, light glowing in her palms as she healed a bleeding recruit. Don't die on me, idiots! But for every Centauri who fell, another replaced them. And then, Draco's flames swept the field. Riven strode through the chaos like it was his coronation. The dragon coiled down his arm, scales glowing molten. With a flick of his wrist, fire spilled across the courtyard, igniting Orion's barricades. Kaelen shielded his face from the heat, teeth clenched. Draco! He shouted. Riven's head turned. Their eyes locked across the firestorm. Riven smiled, not cruelly, calmly, like a teacher amused by his student. Still hiding your light, Kael? Riven called. His voice carried, even over screams and steel. You'll lose them all unless you use it. Kaelen's chest burned. His unstable signature begged to erupt, stars spinning behind his eyes. He forced it down, shaking with the effort. I'm not your puppet, Kaelen snarled. Riven raised his hand. The dragon roared from his arm, flames crashing toward Orion's line. Kaelen threw himself forward, bracing for impact, and Alara appeared. Shadows coiled around her like ribbons, devouring the fire before it reached the recruits. The courtyard fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat. Alara's eyes glimmered as she looked at Kaelen. You burn too bright. Let me carry some of it. Her shadow wrapped around his arm, cool against the fire inside him. The unstable storm steadied, just slightly. Kaelen drew a sharp breath and charged. The clash was thunder. Kaelen and Cassian broke through Centauri's line, fists and balance striking in tandem. Lyra's healing kept the wounded on their feet, her defiance blazing brighter than her fear. Riven's flames clashed with Alara's shadows, fire against night. Sparks lit the courtyard like a second constellation. Kaelen threw himself into the storm, fists striking, stars threatening to rip free. He could feel them straining, like a dam about to burst. Riven's eyes burned as he pressed forward, dragonfire consuming everything. "Show me, Kael. Show them what you are." Kaelen roared and let the storm surge. For an instant, constellations exploded around him, dozens at once, flashing in and out, unstable, chaotic, impossible. The ground split, the air shook, and recruits screamed as light and shadow tangled into something that wasn't meant to exist. When it cleared, the courtyard was wreckage. Centauri had fallen back. Draco recruits stared in awe and horror. Even Orion stood frozen, eyes wide with fear. Kaelen stood in the crater, chest heaving, the unstable stars flickering like dying candles. Riven smiled across the destruction, dragon still blazing. "Now," he murmured, "they'll never forget." And he turned, leading his house away, not defeated, merely finished, as if the siege had only ever been a performance. Silence settled over the ruin. Then, from Orion's ranks, a whisper, "Monster." Kaelen's stomach dropped. He looked around at his house, at Lyra pale and shaken, at Cassian's eyes hard with something like betrayal. The fault line had cracked open, and Kaelen stood on the wrong side of it. Chapter 10. Ashes and Chains. The courtyard still smoked. Kaelen stood in the crater he'd made, his hands trembling, the stars within him flickering faint and restless. Around him, recruits whispered. They didn't rush to him. They didn't cheer his victory. They edged back as if he were the fire. Lyra reached him first. Her hands hovered at his shoulders, but her eyes showed fear she was trying to hide. "Kael," she whispered, "you have to stop before they see too much." But the wardens had already arrived. The doors of the great hall thundered open. The wardens of Polaris marched into the courtyard in formation, silver-armored and marked with constellations none of the students bore. Their eyes glowed faintly, watchers, judges, executioners, when the Academy demanded. Their captain's voice cut through the silence. "Stand down, all of you." The battling houses froze. Even Riven's dragonfire curled back into his arm as if obedient to a higher order. The captain's gaze fell on Kaelen. "You, with us." Kaelen felt every eye on him. His fists clenched, but Lyra squeezed his hand before he could resist. He let the wardens seize him by the arms, their grip like iron. They dragged him away from the wreckage of the siege, leaving Orion House in stunned silence. The interrogation chamber was all stone and starlight. A circle of constellations glowed faintly on the floor, forming a seal that hummed when Kaelen stepped inside. The captain sat across the table. His armor gleamed, face sharp as chiseled granite. "Kaelen Arden," he said, "unmarked by the archive, bearing no signature we recognize. Yet you wield a power that bends the fabric of our order." Kaelen swallowed. "I didn't ask for this, I didn't." The captain raised a hand. "The Academy is not a place for accident or excuse. It is a crucible. Tell us what you are." Kaelen's chest burned. The unstable storm inside him twisted, desperate to answer, to burst free. He forced it down, teeth grinding. "I don't know," he said. The captain studied him. The constellation circle flared, responding not to lies but to uncertainty. He wasn't lying, and they knew it. After a long silence, the captain leaned back. "Very well. We will watch you. Closer than you can imagine." The circle dimmed. Chains of starlight shimmered across Kaelen's wrists, light, intangible, but heavy all the same. "You will return to Orion House," the captain said. "But understand this, the next fracture, and you will not return at all." They released him at dawn. Orion House waited in silence. Recruits looked away as he entered, some with fear, some with open resentment. Cassian stepped forward, Libra mark faintly glowing. "The wardens should have expelled you." Lyra shoved him back. "He saved us." Cassian's voice was ice. "He nearly killed us." The room crackled with tension. The recruits' whispers buzzed like hornets. Fracture. Cursed. Monster. Kaelen stood in the middle, chains of starlight still faintly glowing at his wrists. He looked at his house, his supposed family, and saw the fracture widening. And in the corner, Alara leaned against the wall, watching with unreadable eyes. When their gazes met, she gave the faintest nod. Later, when the dorm quieted, she found him outside, staring at the constellations. "They'll never accept you," she said softly. "Not while you're bound by their rules." Kaelen exhaled, hard. "What choice do I have?" Alara's shadows curled faintly at her fingertips. "You have a choice they fear you'll make. You can follow the cracks, past the archive they gave us, to the truth beneath it." Her words hung in the cold air, heavier than the warden's chains. Kaelen looked down at his glowing wrists, then up at the constellations that refused to claim him. For the first time, he wondered if Alara was right. Chapter 11. The Breaking Point. The silence in Orion House was worse than the battle. Every glance felt like a blade. Every whisper carried his name. Kaelen walked through the dormitory halls and heard doors close, conversations cut short. The recruits who once sparred at his side now edged away. The chains of starlight around his wrists had faded to near invisibility, but everyone could still see them. They glimmered faintly whenever he clenched his fists. Cassian made sure no one forgot. The fracture showed itself at the training grounds. Orion recruits sparred under the autumn sky, the clang of practice blades echoing through the courtyard. Kaelen stepped onto the field, intent on joining. Cassian raised a hand. "No." Kaelen froze. "What?" Cassian's Libra mark glimmered. His voice carried across the recruits. "You're too dangerous. You'll sit out until the wardens clear you." Kalen's blood ran hot. "They told me to return to training. And I'm telling you, you won't train with us." Cassian's tone was calm, sharp, the way a sword cut clean, without hesitation. Whispers rippled across the recruits. Lyra stepped forward, fury in her eyes. "You don't get to exile him, Cassian." Cassian's gaze didn't waver. "I don't exile him. The Academy will, if he keeps breaking the rules." Kalen's fists clenched. The chains glimmered. He wanted to swing, to wipe that calm certainty off Cassian's face. Instead, he turned and walked off the field, recruits parting around him as though he carried plague. That night, Orion's common room turned into a tribunal. Cassian stood by the hearth, arms crossed, Libra mark faintly aglow. Recruits clustered around him, some whispering agreement, others keeping their distance. Lyra paced furiously, her voice raw. "You'd throw him out after everything? He fought harder than anyone in that siege." Cassian's tone was level, almost weary. "He didn't fight with us, Lyra. He fought above us. And if you think the wardens will keep tolerating that, you're blind." "Blind?" Lyra snapped. "Or maybe I see more clearly than you. Kael's not our enemy. He's our only chance to survive this place." Cassian turned, sharp as a blade. "And what happens the next time he fractures? What happens when the storm in him decides we're in its way? How many of us die before you admit he's a threat?" The common room rang with silence. All eyes turned to Kaelen. He stood in the doorway, every muscle taut. His chest felt hollow, like the storm inside had burned everything else away. "If I'm such a threat," Kaelen said quietly, "then maybe you should make it official." Cassian's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Kaelen stepped into the firelight. The chains on his wrists flickered faintly, throwing long shadows. "Challenge me, right here. If you think I don't belong in Orion, prove it." Gasps echoed. Recruits stepped back, hungry for the spectacle, terrified of what it might unleash. Cassian's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, Kaelen thought he'd refuse. Then the Libra mark flared. "I accept." The duel was set for dawn. By Polaris law, a sanctioned duel between recruits could settle disputes of honor and standing. If Kaelen lost, he'd be exiled from Orion House. If he won, he would prove nothing except that the storm inside him could not be denied. Lyra begged him through the night. "You don't have to do this, Kael. Don't let Cassian trap you." Kaelen sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the faint shimmer of chains on his wrists. I can't keep running. Not from Cassian, not from the wardens, not from what's inside me. In the corner, Alara's voice slipped like smoke. If you're going to fight him, then fight to end it. Not just for Orion, for yourself. Her eyes glittered in the moonlight. Every chain you let them put on you will strangle you in the end. Kaelen didn't answer. But as dawn approached, and the dual circle was drawn in the courtyard, he knew there was no path left but forward. Chapter 12. Balance broken. Dawn bled silver across the courtyard. The recruits of Polaris gathered in a circle, breath fogging the crisp air. Whispers laced with anticipation and dread spread through the crowd. Even the instructors stood back, loud but silent, eyes watchful. In the center of the circle, Cassian waited. His Libra mark glowed faintly at his throat, a scale shimmering in astral light. He stood with blade in hand, posture perfect, calm as carved stone. Not a flicker of doubt showed in his stance. Kaelen stepped into the circle opposite him. His wrists still bore the faint shimmer of the warden's chains. His storm coiled within, restless, eager. The moment the two locked eyes, the courtyard hushed. An instructor's voice cut through the silence. By the laws of Polaris, this duel will decide the dispute. Fight with honor. Stop only when one yields or cannot rise. The star seal flared around them, enclosing the duel. Cassian's voice carried, steady and measured. This isn't about victory, Kaelen. It's about balance. You tip the scale too far and we all fall with you. Kaelen's jaw tightened. Then let's see if your balance can hold. The seal blazed. The duel began. Cassian struck first. His blade shimmered with Libra's mark, every swing precise, measured, perfectly weighted. He moved like a pendulum, never wasted a step, never overextended. Kaelen dodged the first arc, the storm in him urging to burst free. His own strikes came rougher, heavier. He wasn't polished like Cassian, but when his blade met steel, sparks flew like lightning. Cassian shifted, his mark flaring. The ground tilted under Kaelen's feet. He staggered, balance ripped away by invisible scales. The crowd gasped. Libra's signature didn't just weigh things, it judged equilibrium, tilting the battlefield itself. Kaelen's knees buckled. Cassian's blade came down fast. Kaelen barely deflected it, the impact jarring through his arms. "Yield," Cassian said coldly, "before you hurt us all." Kaelen's storm roared in answer. Lightning burst across his skin, raw arcs snapping through the seal. He surged forward, his strike hammering against Cassian's blade with enough force to send a shockwave through the courtyard. The recruits cried out, shielding their eyes. Cassian slid back, boots carving grooves in the dirt, but he did not fall. His mark flared brighter, Libra's scales manifesting in shimmering light above them. They wavered as if measuring Kaelen's unstable storm. And for a moment, they tipped. Cassian's eyes widened. "What are you?" Kaelen's storm surged, pressing the scales until they cracked. Astral shards rained down like glass. The seal strained, the dual circle trembling on the edge of breaking. Kaelen's voice was low, rough, echoing with power. "Not yours to judge." He swung again. The impact shattered the balance. The scales of Libra broke. Cassian's blade flew from his hand. He was hurled across the circle, slamming hard into the dirt. The glowing seal guttered and collapsed in sparks. Silence reigned. Cassian coughed, blood streaking his lip. He struggled to his knees, eyes blazing with equal fury and disbelief. But his voice cracked as he spoke the words, "Polaris law demanded. I yield." The courtyard erupted in chaos. Some recruits shouted triumph, others horror. Instructors rushed forward, their faces pale, whispering of omens and breaches. Kaelen stood in the center, chest heaving, storm sparking faintly around him. He'd won, but as he looked at Cassian's broken scales, at the fear in the recruit's eyes, he felt no victory. Only the widening fracture. And in the shadows beyond the crowd, Alara watched with a small, knowing smile. Chapter 13. The weight of judgment. The storm lingered. Even after the dual circle dissolved, even after the crowd scattered, Kaelen felt it in his chest, like thunder pacing, restless. Every footstep across the Academy stones seemed to crackle faintly. No one spoke to him on the walk back to Orion House. Some stared openly, others averted their eyes. Lyra stayed close, but even she kept glancing sideways at the faint sparks that still hissed around his fingers. Cassian had been taken to the infirmary, his Libra mark still dim, drained from being broken. And with him gone, Orion House felt gutted, half its heart torn out, the other half watching Kaelen as though he had killed a god. The summons came before dusk. 2 wardens stood at the door, armor gleaming under the torchlight. One spoke curtly. "The headmaster calls you." Kaelen followed in silence. They led him not to the Hall of Constellations, but deeper, down staircases of black marble, past chambers veined with star ore. Torches flickered with pale blue flames, casting long shadows on the walls. At last, he entered a vaulted chamber, its ceiling open to the stars. The headmaster stood at the center. His cloak shimmered like night sky woven into fabric. Around him waited 3 figures, high wardens, their armor etched with constellations that pulsed faintly with power. Kaelen felt their gaze like weight pressing down on him. "Kaelen Oris," the headmaster intoned, "you broke Libra's balance." Kaelen's voice was raw. "Cassian challenged me. I didn't choose it." The headmaster's expression didn't change. "And yet the scales shattered. Do you understand what that means?" Kaelen clenched his fists. The faint chains shimmered across his wrists, the ones the wardens had left after the last incident. "That Cassian wasn't strong enough." One of the wardens stepped forward, his voice sharp. "It means your signature is not bound to any constellation we know. It resists judgment. Even Libra, the scale of truth, could not weigh you." Silence stretched. The headmaster's gaze was unreadable. "You are an anomaly, Kaelen. Perhaps a miracle, perhaps a threat." The words landed heavy. Kaelen's chest tightened, storm surging against its cage. Another warden leaned close to the headmaster, whispering, but Kaelen caught fragments. "Containment. Expulsion. Dangerous." The headmaster raised a hand. "Not yet. We will watch. Closely. But know this, Kaelen Oris, one more fracture and the Academy itself may cast you out." The torches guttered, as though the stars themselves dimmed. When Kaelen returned to Orion House, the common room went silent. Lyra jumped to her feet. "What did they say?" Kaelen looked around the room. Recruits stared at him, some wary, some hostile, some with a flicker of awe they quickly hid. He felt their judgment like knives against his skin. "They don't know what I am," he said finally, "but they're waiting for me to slip." Cassian wasn't there, but his absence was a wound that split Orion in 2. Half the recruits drifted toward Lyra's side, still loyal to Kaelen after the siege and the duel. The other half muttered, eyes sharp, already whispering about new leaders. And in the crack between those factions, Kaelen stood alone. That night, Lyra found him on the tower balcony, the stars cold above. "You should have seen them," she whispered. "Some of the recruits, they weren't just afraid. They looked at you like you were one of the stars themselves." Kaelen didn't answer. His storm stirred faintly at her words, as though hungering. Lyra touched his arm. "Whatever you are, Kael, you're not alone. Not while I'm here." From the shadows of the tower, another voice slid in, smooth, amused. "Ilara. And not while I'm here either." Kaelen turned sharply. She leaned against the archway, her eyes glimmering like starlight reflected in black water. "You broke Libra's scales," Ilara said softly, almost reverently. "Do you realize what that means? Fate itself cannot bind you. No star has claim on you." Her smile curved. "That makes you dangerous and glorious." Lyra stiffened. "Don't twist this, Ilara. He's not your weapon." Ilara only laughed. "Not mine, but not yours either." She stepped forward, gaze never leaving Kaelen's. "The Academy fears you, Kael. Orion fractures around you. The wardens circle like vultures. And when they turn on you, when they chain you for good, You'll have a choice. Obey, or become what you were meant to be. Her words lingered like smoke long after she slipped away into the shadows. Kaelen stared at the stars, the storm inside him restless, unquiet. And for the first time, he wondered if Alara was right. Chapter 14. Ashes of Orion. The infirmary doors opened with a slow groan. Cassian stepped out, pale but unbowed. His Libra mark still glimmered faintly at his throat, though the scales no longer balanced cleanly. One side flickered, broken glass light that would not mend. The common room of Orion froze when they saw him. Some recruits straightened, instinctively falling back into the gravity Cassian commanded. Others glanced at Kaelen, waiting. Cassian's gaze swept the room. When it landed on Kaelen, the silence deepened until it pressed like weight on bone. He did not speak. He only inclined his head once, cold and measured, before climbing the stairs to his quarters. But the message was clear. He had yielded once. He would not forgive it. Kaelen left before whispers turned to shouts. He wandered the halls, letting the storm simmer, searching for quiet. His steps carried him not to the training fields or the towers, but down, into the lesser-used vault corridors that wound beneath Polaris like veins. Few recruits ventured here. The air smelled of stone dust and oil, torches burned low, and the walls were carved with old constellations, half-faded from centuries. He paused at a door left slightly ajar. Inside, an archive chamber. Shelves heavy with scrolls, star maps pinned to boards, fragments of ore sealed in crystal. At the far end, an old keeper hunched over a table, quill scratching across parchment. The man looked up when Kaelen entered, brows rising. "You're not supposed to be here." "I was lost," Kaelen lied. His eyes drifted over the shelves. One caught his gaze. The keeper followed it, his expression tightening. "Those aren't for recruits." But Kaelen had already seen the name stamped into the spine of a leather-bound ledger. Oris. His breath caught. He stepped forward before he could stop himself. "That name?" The keeper's hand shot out, barring his way. "Family archives are sealed unless permission is given." "My brother was killed," Kaelen said sharply, "during the first starfall. His name was Oris. If there's anything here..." The keeper hesitated. His eyes softened, just a fraction. "The Oris file is restricted for a reason. If I show you a page, the wardens would have my head." Kaelen's storm stirred. Sparks whispered across his knuckles. "Please?" The keeper stared at him for a long moment. Then with a sigh, he drew a thin sheaf from the ledger and slid it across the table. "One page, then you leave." Kaelen's hands shook as he lifted it. The document was faded, but his brother's name was clear. Oris. Recorded casualty, first impact zone. Beneath it, a list of annotations. Recovered fragment exposure, confirmed. Signature manifestation, unstable, unaligned. Containment attempted, failure. Transferred to wardens for special observation. Kaelen's chest went cold. His brother hadn't simply died. He'd been taken. The keeper snatched the page back quickly, tucking it into the ledger. "That's all, go. And forget you saw it, boy, if you value your place here." Kaelen left, his storm boiling louder than it had since the duel. His brother hadn't been a victim of chance. He'd been like Kaelen, unstable, unaligned, and the wardens had known. Back in Orion House, Lyra found him sitting rigid by the fire. She frowned at his expression. "What happened?" Kaelen looked up, his voice low, almost breaking. "Arik. He wasn't killed by the star. He was like me. They took him." Lyra's eyes widened. "The wardens?" He nodded. The fire crackled between them, throwing long shadows against the walls. Before Lyra could answer, Cassian descended the stairs, silent as a blade. His gaze cut between them, then lingered on Kaelen. "You dig in shadows," Cassian said softly. "Be careful. Some truths don't want to be unearthed." Kaelen rose to his feet, storm sparking faintly. "You knew?" Cassian's mouth curved in something between a smile and a grimace. I know the wardens keep their secrets for a reason. And I know your brother's ghost is the last thing Orion House needs. His eyes glinted. Don't drag us all into your storm, Oris, or next time I won't yield. The air between them grew taut. The house hushed, recruits holding their breath. Kaelen stared at Cassian, fury and grief burning in equal measure. He thought of the broken scales, of the headmaster's warning, of Alara's whisper. Fate itself cannot bind you. He clenched his fists until his nails bit skin. Then maybe, Kaelen said, his voice low, trembling with storm, fate should be afraid of me. Chapter 15. The fractured house. Orion House used to hum like a living thing. Voices rising over meals, laughter between drills, the clash of sparring in the yard. But since the duel, since the shattering of Libra's scales, it had become a nest of whispers. Kaelen felt them every time he walked through the hall. Glances darted, words cut off mid-sentence, shoulders shifting away. Half the recruits clustered around Lyra, standing awkwardly in their loyalty. The others drifted closer to Cassian, who no longer needed to bark orders. His silence was command enough. At mealtime, the divide was visible. 2 tables, 2 fires, and Kaelen sat in the no-man's land between them, the air heavy with unspoken judgment. That night, Lyra found him in the training yard beating the practice dummies until the wood cracked. You can't keep doing this, she said. Kaelen's breath came hard. His storm flickered across his arms, leaving faint scorch marks on the dummy's surface. Doing what? Carrying it all alone. The house, Cassian, your brother. If you keep locking it inside, you'll break before they do. He looked away, jaw clenched. I found records, Lyra. Auric wasn't just killed. The wardens took him, for observation. Lyra went still. Observation? What does that even mean? It means he was like me. Kaelen's voice dropped, bitter. Unstable, unaligned, and they hid it. Lyra touched his shoulder, her eyes sharp with conviction. Then we find out what happened to him, together. He wanted to believe her, but the storm inside him whispered of chains, of wardens, of scales shattered. The next morning, Cassian called a house meeting. Orion gathered in the common hall. Cassian stood at the hearth, pale but commanding, Libra's scar glimmering faintly on his throat. Orion is breaking, he said flatly. You feel it, I feel it, and it comes from one source. Eyes turned toward Kaelen. Cassian's voice was calm, deliberate. I yielded in our duel, but yielding was not losing. Remember that. What was broken was not Orion's strength, but the scales themselves. And if the scales of judgment cannot weigh a man, what does that make him? Murmurs rippled. Dangerous, unnatural, cursed. Cassian let them build before continuing. We are Orion, the house of the hunter. We chase, we strike, we endure. We are not here to follow storms that shatter the laws of the stars. Some recruits nodded, murmuring agreement. Lyra rose to her feet, eyes blazing. He saved us in the siege. Without Kaelen, you'd be ash. Don't forget that. Cassian's gaze flicked to her, unreadable. And without balance, we're ash anyway. You would put your faith in someone the wardens themselves do not trust? Someone who admits his own brother was corrupted by the same anomaly? The hall went still. Kaelen's fists clenched. Cassian knew. Somehow he knew. Cassian's voice dropped lower, intimate, almost kind. I don't want to cast him out, but Orion must decide. Who do we follow? The storm or the hunter? The line was drawn, and it cut straight through the heart of Orion. Later, Kaelen stormed down to the vault corridors again. Lyra chased after him. Don't let him get in your head, she hissed. He already has, Kaelen snapped. His storm hissed against the stone, sparking faintly. How does he know about Auric? How much do the wardens whisper in his ear? They reached the archive door again, but this time it wasn't ajar. 2 wardens stood posted there, their spears crossed. Access sealed, one said coldly. Kaelen felt his storm surge in defiance, pressing against the chains. Lyra caught his arm before it flared. Not like this, she whispered. If we want answers, we find another way. Not with the whole academy watching. Kaelen forced the storm down, though it roared against his ribs. He turned away, his jaw set. As they left, he caught sight of a figure further down the corridor. Ilara, leaning against the wall, watching with eyes like starfire. She smiled faintly. They've locked you out, she said softly. But doors are only doors. Walls are only walls. You want the truth about your brother? About yourself? You'll have to break something bigger than Libra's scales. Her gaze burned into him. You'll have to break the academy. The words slid into him like a blade. Kaelen said nothing, but the storm inside him pulsed once, answering. Chapter 16. Trial by Starlight. The summons came at dawn. A horn's call shook the dormitories, and wardens strode the halls, their armor gleaming in the pale light. One barked the announcement with clipped formality. All recruits, report to the central arena. Today begins the Starlight Trial. Whispers erupted instantly. The Starlight Trial. Every recruit had heard of it, some as rumor, some as threat. A field operation designed to test coordination, adaptability, and raw courage. Most houses faced it in their second year, but the academy had chosen to bring it early. Kaelen dressed quickly, his storm uneasy, sparking faintly against his skin. Lyra caught his arm as they marched with the others. They're pushing us, she murmured, testing if Orion holds or breaks. Her eyes flicked toward Cassian up ahead, flanked by half the house. His posture was perfect, cold, unyielding. Kaelen said nothing. He only clenched his fists. The arena's floor had been transformed overnight. No flat sparring ground remained. Instead, shimmering illusions of cliffs and ruins towered upward, constellations burning above like watchful eyes. The headmaster stood at the platform, his voice carrying like thunder. The Starlight Trial is a crucible. Each house will enter, tasked with recovering a star fragment seated deep within the field. Succeed, and your house proves its strength. Fail, and you prove nothing. He paused, letting silence fall like weight. Remember, the field is shaped by the stars themselves. The dangers within are not illusions. They are real, and they will not care for rivalries. Kaelen's storm hissed louder. The headmaster's gaze found him, steady and knowing. Orion, enter. The landscape swallowed them whole. Jagged cliffs loomed, broken ruins scattered across the terrain. Overhead, constellations shifted and reformed, their light spilling down to shape the dangers below. A river of molten starlight cut across the valley, its glow searing. The fragment pulsed somewhere beyond, a beacon tugging at Kaelen's chest. Cassian raised a hand. Form up! Hunters to the ridges! Balance signs with me! Storm! His eyes cut to Kaelen. Hold the rear! Don't waste yourself! The words stung, but Kaelen bit back retort. They advanced. The first attack came fast. Spectral beasts conjured from Leo's constellation. Great lions of burning starlight, their roars shaking the cliffs. Recruits scattered into formation. Arrows streaked from Sagittarii bright and swift. Shield bearers braced. Cassian's Libra mark flared, scales shimmering, weighing the lion's force and redirecting it. Kaelen's storm surged, begging to be unleashed. He struck out once, lightning lancing into a lion's chest, scattering it to ash. But when he turned, Cassian's glare burned like fire. Control it, Cassian snapped. You're not the spear. You're the chaos. Hold. Kaelen seethed, storm crawling against his skin like a cage too tight. Hours passed in waves of trial. Shifting constellations brought new threats. Shadows from Scorpio, swarms from Hydra. The house fought, but cracks showed. Recruits muttered, orders clashed, trust frayed. Then came the worst. As they neared the fragment's beacon, the terrain itself split. A chasm tore through the ruins, deep and jagged, starlight boiling far below. The only crossing, a narrow bridge of crumbling stone. Cassian turned. 2 at a time. Balance signs to stabilize. Sagittarius to cover. He gestured to Kaelen. You last. Kaelen's jaw tightened. Why? Because if your storm flares, you'll bring the bridge down and kill us all. Silence. Eyes darted between them. Lyra stepped forward, anger sharp in her voice. He's saved us more than once. Stop treating him like... The bridge groaned. From the chasm below, shapes rose, winged, taloned, burning with starlight. Harpies of Aquila. The recruits panicked. Arrows loosed. Shouts rang. The bridge shook. Cassian barked orders, his voice iron. Hold formation, cross in pairs. But the harpies swarmed, ripping through the line. A recruit screamed, dragged toward the edge. Kaelen didn't think. He leapt forward, storm roaring, lightning carving arcs through the harpies. The sky lit with fire. The creatures shrieked and fell. The recruits stared, stunned. But so did the bridge. Stone cracked, thundered, fell. Half the span crumbled into the chasm. Recruits barely clung to safety, scrambling back. Cassian rounded on Kaelen, fury burning in his eyes. I told you. Kaelen cut him off, storm sparking across his chest. If I hadn't acted, we'd be carrion right now. Because you can't follow, Cassian snapped. You think the storm saves us, but it nearly killed us all. The house looked between them, shaken, splintered. Lyra's voice rose above the chaos. Stop it. Both of you. The fragment's still out there, and if we keep tearing each other apart, we'll never reach it. Silence, heavy. At last, Cassian turned away, cold. Fine, but mark me, Oris. The next time you break formation, it won't be the bridge that falls. They pressed onward, weary and divided. The beacon of the fragment glowed nearer, pulsing with power. Kaelen felt it call to him, the same way his storm whispered, the same way his brother's ghost pulled in his bones. He clenched his fists, eyes burning. If this fragment held answers, nothing, not Cassian, not the wardens, not even the stars, would keep him from it. Chapter 17. The Shard's Voice. The beacon pulsed brighter with every step. They found the fragment at the heart of a shattered ruin, a crystalline mass lodged in stone, glowing with an inner pulse like a heartbeat. It cast jagged shadows across the courtyard, its light warping the air. The recruits faltered, awe heavy on their faces. Even Cassian paused, his jaw set tight, eyes reflecting the fragment's brilliance. Kaelen felt it in his bones, a call. Not words, not sound, but recognition, like a storm remembering the sea. Lyra whispered, almost reverent. It's beautiful. Cassian snapped out of his trance. Form up, shields forward. Nothing touches it until I give word. He moved toward it, Libra's scales flickering faintly across his chest. His hand hovered over the fragment, testing, measuring, judging. Kaelen's storm roared in protest. His skin burned, his breath caught. Every part of him screamed, not him, me. Before he realized it, he was moving. Kaelen! Lyra's warning came too late. He seized the fragment. Light swallowed him whole. The courtyard vanished. The recruits, the ruins, even the stars above, all gone. He stood in a void of infinite black, lit only by constellations burning around him. But they were wrong. Some constellations shone steady, strong, the known signatures. Others flickered faintly, half-formed, as if still waiting to be named. And beyond them, hundreds more, alien and wild, twisted shapes that no star map had ever charted. A voice rippled through the void. Not one voice, many. A chorus of whispers, sharp as broken glass. Oris, Starborn, anomaly. You do not belong. You belong to all. Kaelen staggered. What? What are you? The whispers wove around him. The sky is broken. The stars are not fixed. You carry the proof. The fragment recognizes you. Your brother recognized you. The wardens feared him. They fear you. Kaelen's heart clenched. Arik? You know what happened to him? The stars flared, then dimmed. A fleeting image. Chains, a chamber of cold steel, his brother screaming as the storm tore him apart. Then darkness. The chains will come for you too, unless you unmake them first. The void shuddered. Constellations cracked like glass, scattering shards across infinity. A storm rose, vast and endless, and it poured into Kaelen's chest. His body lit with lightning, veins blazing. Then, he slammed back into reality. The courtyard was chaos. Recruits staggered, shielding their eyes. Cassian was on his knees, Libra's scales shivering like they'd been struck by a hammer. Lyra clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. The fragment was gone. Or rather, it wasn't gone. It had fused into Kaelen's chest, glowing faintly beneath his skin. The warden's horns blared across the arena. Figures in silver armor descended from the cliffs, spears leveled. "Step away from him," one barked. Orion House froze. The warden's gaze was locked only on Kaelen. Cassian rose slowly, his face pale, but his eyes like steel. "I warned you," he whispered, "only for Kaelen. And now they'll put chains on you, just like your brother." Lyra pushed between them, defiant. "He saved us, Silence," the lead warden snapped. "This recruit is under custody by order of the Polaris Council. He carries corruption in his veins." The house recoiled. Whispers of corruption, anomaly, cursed spread like fire. Kaelen felt his storm throb, desperate, wild. The fragment burned in his chest. He looked at the wardens, at Cassian's cold fury, at Lyra's desperate eyes. And he knew, if he let them take him, he'd never see freedom again. Never find the truth. Never learn what Arak had become. The wardens advanced. Kaelen's storm rose. The ground cracked, lightning arced, and the courtyard exploded in thunder. Chapter 18. Chains of Starlight. The wardens closed in with mechanical precision, silver helms glinting, spears leveled like judgment itself. "Stand down," their captain ordered, voice amplified by some unseen resonance. "By command of the Polaris Council, the anomaly is to be restrained." The word anomaly cut deeper than the steel tips aimed at his chest. Kaelen's storm boiled, veins glowing with the fragment's pulse. He saw Cassian's expression, calm, almost vindicated. Lyra's hand brushed his shoulder, trembling but defiant. "Kael," she whispered, "don't. Too late." Lightning roared. Kaelen surged forward, his storm erupting in a corona of white-blue fire. The first spear shattered on contact, arcs leaping from tip to haft. The warden behind it convulsed, flung backward into stone. "Hold him," the captain barked. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Wardens moved like a single organism, weaving formations with drilled perfection. Their armor flared with sigils, protection from starborn force, channeled from constellations unknown to the recruits. But Kaelen wasn't fighting with one signature. He wasn't even fighting with one storm. The fragment burned in his chest, feeding him with power that felt wrong, alien, yet intimately his. Lightning bent in directions it shouldn't, splitting mid-air, forming shapes almost like constellations rewriting themselves. Every strike staggered them. But the wardens weren't ordinary foes. One slammed a spear butt to the ground, and a dome of luminous chains erupted around Kaelen. They snaked through the air like living serpents, snapping tight around his wrists, his throat. The storm shrieked. Kaelen fell to his knees, the chains pulling tighter, burning against his skin. His lightning fizzled, guttering. The captain strode forward, gauntlet outstretched. "It's over. The council will decide your fate." Lyra screamed. She darted forward, blade drawn, only to be caught by another warden. "No!" Kaelen's vision tunneled. He felt the chains burrow deeper, draining, crushing. And something inside him snapped. The fragment's light erupted. The courtyard drowned in blinding brilliance, every shadow erased. Constellations flickered overhead, but wrong, rearranged, twisted, breaking their ancient shapes. The chains shattered like brittle glass. Kaelen stood, wreathed in stormfire so fierce even the wardens faltered. His voice was not entirely his own when he spoke. "I am not your prisoner." Lightning blasted outward, an expanding wave. Wardens were hurled back like leaves in a gale, armor sparking, spears melted. The captain slammed into the cliff wall, armor denting with the force. When the light dimmed, silence remained. The wardens lay scattered, broken but not dead. Kaelen's chest burned, his storm guttered, spent, his knees buckled. Only Lyra's hands kept him standing. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not of the wardens, of him. The horns blared again, not summoning, warning. From the cliff tops, more wardens massed, dozens, perhaps 100. Cassian's voice cut through the ringing silence, cool and sharp as a blade. Run, Oris. Run while you can. They'll never let you stay now. His words weren't mercy. They were condemnation dressed as advice. Lyra pulled at Kaelen's arm. He's right, move. Kaelen's storm flickered weakly. He knew he couldn't fight another wave. Not yet. Not without burning out completely. So he did the only thing he could. He ran. They fled through the fractured arena, ruins collapsing behind them as a lightning continued to crackle in Kaelen's wake. The academy bells tolled an alarm, each peal echoing like judgment. Every step carried a weight he couldn't escape. The wardens would brand him a fugitive. The council would call him a threat. And Cassian would use this to carve Orion House in half. But deeper still burned the image the fragment had shown him. Chains, steel, his brother screaming. The wardens had known what Arik was, and they had caged him. Never again, Kaelen swore. They will not cage me. Chapter 19. Ashes of Trust. The ruins gave way to forest, stone giving way to roots. Kaelen stumbled, half dragged by Lyra, lightning still whispering faintly across his skin. They didn't stop until the academy's lights had vanished behind the trees. Only then did Lyra let go, her chest heaving, eyes still bright with fear. What in the void was that? She hissed. Kaelen collapsed against a tree, the bark rough against his back. His storm flickered, then dimmed to nothing, leaving only exhaustion. I don't know. It wasn't me, it was... He touched his chest where the fragment pulsed faintly beneath his skin. It was this. Lyra's blade was still in her hand. She hadn't even realized she was holding it. Slowly, she lowered it, though her knuckles stayed white. They'll hunt you, she said. The wardens won't stop. They think you're corrupted. They'll brand you like some kind of monster. He thought of Arik, chains binding his brother, screams swallowed by silence. His hands trembled. Maybe they're right. No, Lyra snapped sharp enough to make him flinch. Don't you dare. You saved us, me, all of Orion House. If that's corruption, then maybe the council should take a long look at itself. Her voice wavered at the edges. She believed in him, but she had seen what he did. The storm that shattered chains and rearranged constellations. And fear lingered in her eyes. They found shelter in the abandoned watchtower at the forest's edge. Dust and cobwebs clung to the stones, but it was dry, hidden. Lyra kept watch at the cracked window while Kaelen collapsed onto a broken bench. Silence stretched. Finally, Lyra spoke. Cassian's going to spin this. He'll tell the houses you're dangerous, that Orion can't protect itself with you in it. Kaelen laughed bitterly. He won't have to spin anything. I handed it to him. You handed him nothing. You fought the wardens because they tried to chain you like a beast. She turned, eyes fierce. You're not the villain here. But Kaelen wasn't so sure. Back at Polaris, the bells still tolled. Cassian stood before the council chamber, immaculate despite the chaos. His Libra signature glowed faintly, the scales shimmering in perfect balance. The 12 counselors sat in a crescent of silver and shadow, their robes heavy with starlight. At their center, Archon Selivar, his face carved from marble, eyes like distant stars. You witnessed the anomaly firsthand, Selivar said. His voice carried the weight of centuries. Speak. Cassian bowed. Kaelen Oris seized a fragment of unknown origin. It fused with him. He wielded power beyond any signature's design. He broke warden chains. Cassian hesitated only slightly. He endangered everyone present. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Do you consider him corrupted? Selivar asked. Cassian lifted his chin. I consider him unbound. If left unchecked, he could unravel everything the signatures are meant to be. The council should act swiftly, before his storm spreads. Selivar's gaze lingered, unreadable. Your words carry weight, Draco-bearer, but so do your motives. Cassian inclined his head. I want only to protect Polaris. The Archon didn't answer, but the wardens stationed around the chamber stood straighter. In the shadows outside the chamber, another figure listened. Headmistress Vera, arms crossed, her expression carved with storm lines. She watched Cassian exit, his posture triumphant. And she whispered almost to herself, the stars are shifting again, just like 20 years ago. Back in the watchtower, Kaelen jolted awake from a dream of chains and stars. Lyra was still awake, blade across her knees, eyes on the tree line. They'll come at dawn, she said. Wardens don't stop. Kaelen swallowed. Then we don't wait for dawn. Lyra's head snapped toward him. You mean to run? Hide? No. That won't give me answers. He pushed himself up, legs trembling but resolve hardening. They knew about my brother. They lied about him. And they'll do the same to me, unless I find the truth first. His storm flared, weak but steady. Lyra sheathed her blade and rose. Then I guess I'm coming with you. Kaelen blinked. Why? Her smile was thin, fierce. Because you're hopeless at not getting killed. For the first time since the fragment fused to him, Kaelen felt something like warmth. But it wouldn't last. Dawn was coming. And with it, the wardens. Chapter 20. The Hunt Through Shadows. Dawn broke in shards of crimson and violet, the forest mist glowing like spilled blood. Kaelen and Lyra slipped from the watchtower before the first horn sounded, moving swiftly but not carelessly, blades and storm ready. Every bird call, every crunch of leaves felt like it might mask the tread of boots. And then the horns came. Low, rolling, near. They found the trail, Lyra muttered, her grip tightening on her sword. Kaelen's chest still burned with exhaustion, but the storm in him stirred, answering the hunt. Then we don't give them the easy road. The wardens came like shadows made flesh. Dozens. Silver helms flashing through the trees, spears glowing faintly with binding light. Kaelen Oris! A voice thundered from behind them, magically amplified. By order of the council, surrender yourself. Kaelen sawed into the dirt. Not likely. He thrust his hand toward the canopy. Lightning cracked, splitting branches, dropping whole limbs of trees into the path of their pursuers. Lyra didn't waste the chance. Go! She sprinted through a gully, boots slipping on wet stone. Kaelen followed, sparks flying at his heels. The forest became a gauntlet. Wardens flanked them, moving in perfect formations. One hurled a chain of light. Kaelen's storm barely countered, sparks shredding its links before it closed around his throat. Another leapt from a ridge, spear aimed to pin Kaelen to the ground. Lyra was faster. Her blade rang like steel thunder, deflecting the strike, then slashing across the warden's armor joints. The soldier fell, stunned but alive. Keep moving, she barked. Kaelen's storm lashed at roots and rocks, buying seconds. But the wardens pressed closer, disciplined, unrelenting. The gully opened into a ravine. Ahead, a collapsed stone arch jutted from the cliffs, half buried by earth. Lyra skidded to a halt. Dead end. No. Kaelen's storm flared, instinct tugging him forward. There's something here. He pressed a glowing hand to the archstone, and the fragment in his chest pulsed. The stone groaned. Runes ignited across the arch, constellations bending into shapes unfamiliar. The ground trembled as a hollow passage yawned open beneath, exhaling dust and air stale with centuries. Lyra's eyes widened. What in the— No time. Kaelen grabbed her hand and pulled. Together they plunged into the dark just as warden horns blared overhead. The arch sealed behind them with a rumble of shifting earth. Silence. The tunnel was ancient. Its walls glittered faintly with flecks of crystal, like starlight trapped underground. Each step echoed too loud, their breaths loud enough to betray them. Lyra drew close. Kael, what is this place? He didn't answer, because he recognized it. Not from memory, from his dreams. Chains carved into the stone, a faint groove, where something or someone had been dragged. The image of Arik screaming flickered in his mind, overlapping with the tunnel around him. "He was here," Kaelen whispered, his voice cracked. "My brother. They brought him here." Lyra swallowed. "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen it. The fragment showed me." His storm sparked weakly, brushing across the walls. Ancient sigils responded, faint blue light blooming where his hand passed. Lyra's gaze flicked to the runes. "This isn't just a hiding place, it's a prison." Further in, the tunnel widened into a chamber. At its center stood a dais of black stone, chains dangling from a fractured column. They weren't metal. They shimmered faintly, like solidified starlight. Broken now, but heavy with memory. Kaelen staggered forward, touching one. It was cold. Too cold. His storm surged, and visions slammed into him. Arik, bound, struggling, wardens chanting, their signatures blazing, a counselor watching from the shadows. Then, screams, the fragment searing flesh, the storm ripping free. Kaelen stumbled back, clutching his chest. His knees buckled, and only Lyra's steady grip kept him upright. "They used him," Kaelen rasped. "They called it containment, but they were experimenting. On him. On others." Lyra's jaw tightened. "Then this isn't just about you, or Cassian. The Council's been hiding this for years." Kaelen met her eyes, the weight of truth settling like iron. "And if they're willing to chain us in the dark..." His storm flared, faint but fierce. "Then they'll never stop, unless I stop them first." Above, faint echoes. The wardens were still searching. The horns were closer again. But Kaelen no longer felt hunted. He felt something else. Purpose. Because this chamber wasn't just a grave of chains, it was proof. And with it, maybe a weapon. Chapter 21. Echoes in the Stone. The chamber's air was too still, too heavy. Kaelen felt it pressing against his lungs, as though the walls themselves remembered the suffering that had lived here. Lyra touched the shattered column where chains still dangled. "How long ago do you think this was used?" Kaelen brushed his fingers across the stone, and the fragment in his chest thrummed. Images rippled in his mind, wardens chanting, counselors watching, Arik screaming against bindings of starlight. "Not long enough," Kaelen whispered. They searched the chamber. Crates rotted in corners, their lids warped by time, but some still held shards of parchment, brittle under Kaelen's touch. Strange diagrams were scrawled across them, constellation maps twisted into shapes he didn't recognize. Some were familiar, others entirely alien, as though someone had been trying to force new signatures into being. Lyra leaned over his shoulder, brow furrowed. "They were, experimenting? Or rewriting," Kaelen muttered. "The constellations aren't fixed. Someone here was trying to bend them." The thought made his stomach turn. His brother hadn't just been imprisoned. He'd been a subject, a test. At the far wall, Lyra uncovered a smaller door nearly hidden behind fallen stone. She shoved rubble aside and forced it open with a grunt. Inside lay a smaller chamber, lined with niches like graves. Most were empty. One wasn't. A skeletal figure sat slumped in chains of starlight, head bowed, armor long rusted. The chains still pulsed faintly, as though drinking from something that had long since died. Kaelen's storm reacted violently, sparking across his skin. He staggered forward despite himself, pulled by a compulsion. When his hand brushed the chains, visions roared. Not just Arik, dozens. Names whispered in the dark, fragments forced into flesh, stars cracking inside human veins. Screams, always screams. Kaelen tore his hand back with a shout, breath ragged. Lyra caught him. "What did you see?" "Too many," he gasped. "This wasn't an accident. This was a program." Lyra's eyes hardened. Then the Council's hands are soaked in blood. Back above ground, at Polaris Academy, the storm of politics was reaching its peak. Cassian stood before the gathered houses in the Hall of Constellations, his posture regal, his Draco signature coiling faintly like a serpent of fire. Orion House has failed, Cassian declared, his voice carrying. They harbored a danger greater than any warden could contain. And now Kaelen Oris flees, leaving destruction in his wake. Murmurs spread through the students, whispers tinged with fear. From the benches, Joran of Orion rose, fists clenched. You're twisting this. Kaelen saved us from the wardens. Saved you? Cassian's smile was smooth, razor sharp. Or endangered you with an uncontrolled storm none of us can measure. Tell me, Joran, when the wardens fell, did you feel safe? Joran faltered, anger sputtering. The doubt Cassian had planted rooted quickly. Around the hall, other students shifted uncomfortably. Cassian's words echoed their own fears, unspoken but present. From the dais, Headmistress Vera watched silently, her expression unreadable. But her gaze lingered too long on Cassian, as though measuring his every word against some older memory. In the ruins, Kaelen and Lyra pressed deeper, guided by flickering runes and the fragments' pull. The tunnels ended in a chamber unlike the others, no chains, no graves. Instead, a great stone disk dominated the floor, carved with the zodiac in intricate detail. But the circle was incomplete, whole sections carved over, replaced with symbols that hurt to look at, as though they belonged to constellations that didn't exist yet. Lyra crouched, running her fingers over the grooves. This is a map? Kaelen shook his head. No, a lock. The fragment in his chest pulsed harder, and the runes responded. The stone disk shimmered faintly, stars rearranging themselves like pieces on a board. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. Whatever they kept chained here, this is how they held it. Kaelen stared at the incomplete circle, at the constellations shifting unnaturally. His storm sparked across the disk, filling the gaps. And for a moment, just a moment, he felt something stir beneath the stone. Something vast, ancient, hungry. He recoiled, chest heaving. This wasn't just a prison, it was a vault. Lyra swallowed. A vault for what? Kaelen stared at the glowing disk, the fragment still thrumming in rhythm with its pulse. He didn't have an answer. But deep down, in the marrow of his bones, he feared he already knew. Chapter 22. The Vault and the Serpent. The zodiac disk pulsed faintly under Kaelen's storm. Symbols writhed across the stone, rearranging themselves into constellations he half recognized, half feared. Kael, Lyra said, her voice taut. Step back. I can't. His hand trembled above the carvings. The fragment in his chest thrummed, every beat syncing with the vault's glow. It's calling me. Then ignore it. Lyra grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away. But the storm lashed at her instinctively, sparking hot against her grip. Kaelen's voice was hoarse. It knows me. The disk spun. Slowly at first, then faster, grinding stone on stone. A deep vibration shivered through the chamber, dust cascading from the ceiling. Kaelen staggered as images slammed into his mind. A serpent of stars coiled around the sky. Chains of light binding a figure that burned like a sun. And beneath it all, a voice not human, not mortal, whispering, "Release!" Kaelen's knees buckled. He pressed both palms to the stone, teeth clenched against the storm trying to claw its way out of him. Kael! Lyra dropped beside him, her blade scraping free, not at him, but at the disk. She drove steel into the carvings. Sparks flew. The glow faltered. The whisper recoiled into silence. The disk slowed, grinding to a halt. Kaelen gasped for breath, sweat dripping into the cracks of stone. You... He couldn't even finish the thought. Lyra's eyes blazed. Whatever that was, it wasn't yours to carry. Not now. Not like this. He looked at her, chest still heaving. And for the first time since the fragment had burned into him, he wondered if he'd been seconds away from unleashing something no storm could ever bind again. Far above ground, in the Hall of Constellations, Cassian stood before the gathered students. The banners of the houses hung behind him, but his words were the only fire in the room. The council grows complacent, Cassian said smoothly, his Draco signature curling around him like smoke. The wardens fail, and still, They cling to secrecy. Murmurs spread through the hall. Heads turned. Cassian's gaze swept across them like a blade. But Polaris is not theirs to shackle. It belongs to us, to those with vision enough to wield the constellations, not be chained by them. From the dais, Headmistress Vera rose. The air shifted instantly, the weight of authority filling the chamber. "Careful, Cassian," she said softly. But her voice carried, cutting through the hall. "Your words tread close to treason." Cassian's smile was sharp as glass. "Or truth." For a heartbeat, silence. Then scattered applause, hesitant at first, then stronger from the benches of Draco House and a few from others. Vera's eyes narrowed. "I see the serpent bares its fangs." Cassian bowed mockingly. "And you'll see it coil tighter before the end." That night, behind shuttered doors, Vera convened a secret meeting. The Orion loyalists sat in a half-circle. Joran, arms crossed but fire in his eyes. Mira, pale but defiant. 3 others who had chosen Kaelen over comfort. Vera stood before them, her cloak drawn close. The candlelight flickered across her stern face. "You're right to be afraid," she said without preamble. "Cassian has the Council's ear, and half the Academy already believes his poison. But what he wants is not power alone. He seeks something older." Joran leaned forward. "Older than the Council?" Vera's jaw tightened. "Older than the Academy itself." Mira whispered, "The fragments." Vera met her gaze, unflinching. "Yes, and Kaelen Oris may be the only one who can stop him." Joran slammed a fist into his knee. "Then why aren't we shouting the truth from the rooftops?" "Because truth without proof is ash," Vera said coldly. "Cassian spins lies with the elegance of silk. If you want to fight him, you must have steel." In the ruins, Kaelen and Lyra made camp in the chamber above the vault, too wary to rest near the disk. Kaelen stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint rumble of the stone beneath, as though something vast and patient still stirred below. Lyra sat across the fire watching him. Finally, she spoke. "Do you think Cassian knows about this place?" Kaelen's jaw tightened. "He knows something. Enough to want me gone." Lyra poked the fire with her blade. Sparks leapt into the dark. "Then he won't stop hunting us. Not until he gets what he wants." Kaelen closed his eyes, feeling the fragment pulse once more. And in the silence that followed, he heard it again. Faint, whispered, patient. Release. Chapter 23. Wardens in the Dark. The rumble reached them first. Lyra froze mid-sentence, her hand dropping to the hilt at her side. "That's not the vault." Kaelen's storm prickled across his skin in agreement. The vibration wasn't from below but above. Boots and steel, the echo of organized men in the tunnels. "The wardens," Kaelen muttered. Lyra's mouth tightened. Cassian must have tipped them. A horn blared faintly through the rock, a warning call, sharp and certain. Kaelen rose, his body aching from days of half-rest, but the storm surging stronger at the scent of battle. "Then we can't stay here." They abandoned the camp, climbing higher through the tunnels, the ruins swallowing their footsteps in dust. The wardens' voices grew closer. Clipped commands, iron on stone, the faint thrum of multiple signatures activating at once. Starlight flickered down side corridors, beams of deadly brilliance. Lyra pressed Kaelen against a wall as 3 wardens passed, one cloaked in the cold shimmer of Aquarius, another marked by the jagged glow of Sagittarius. Their armor bore the sigil of the Council, a star wreathed in chains. "They're sweeping," Lyra whispered. "Systematic. They won't stop until they find us." Kaelen's jaw clenched. "Then we make them stop." The ambush was quick, brutal. Kaelen stepped from the shadows, his storm erupting in a burst that flung 2 wardens into the wall. Sparks of his unstable signature scattered across the stone like meteors. The third turned, raising his spear, only for Lyra to strike from behind. Her blade cut through the shimmer of Aquarius's water shield with a hiss, striking true. The man dropped soundlessly. Kaelen stared down at the fallen wardens, chest heaving. They'll know we're here now. They already knew, Lyra said grimly, wiping her blade. The tunnels shook with pursuit. More horns. More light. Kaelen and Lyra sprinted deeper, only to find themselves at the edge of the vault chamber. The zodiac disk still lay silent, but Kaelen felt its pull, heavy as a tide. Behind them, the wardens closed in. They're hurting us, Lyra realized, pushing us here on purpose. Kaelen's storm flared in response, too wild, too eager. Then we make it a mistake. The first wave of wardens entered the chamber in perfect formation. 12 men, their armor glowing with constellations, shields flared, spears leveled, their commander shouting orders like steel. By council decree, Kaelen Oris, submit. Kaelen's laugh was sharp, almost feral. Submit to the same council that chained my brother? His storm detonated outward. The chamber became chaos. Wardens staggered under the force, shields fracturing like brittle glass. Lyra darted among them, her blade a flash of silver, cutting down those thrown off balance. But the wardens were not ordinary soldiers. Arrows of starlight rained from a Sagittarius archer on the ledge, forcing Kaelen to shield with his storm. Water whips of Aquarius lashed from the side. A Taurus charged like a bull, his armored frame shaking the ground. Kaelen pushed harder, his power flaring dangerously unstable. Bolts of starfire crackled wild, scorching walls, shaking the chamber. And the disk below them stirred. The carvings glowed again, brighter this time, feeding on Kaelen's storm as though it were fuel. Symbols writhed, constellations spinning in patterns that didn't belong to the night sky. The wardens faltered. One dropped his spear, staring in horror at the glowing stone. What is that? He breathed. Kaelen staggered, realization dawning too late. His power wasn't just hurting them. It was awakening the vault. Lyra, he shouted. We have to stop. The floor split. Light gushed upward like blood from a wound, swallowing stone and shadow. The zodiac disk cracked down the middle, and from within, something vast shifted. A serpentine silhouette uncoiled beneath the rock, made of stars yet wrong, its body fracturing into too many segments. Its voice echoed in Kaelen's skull release. The wardens broke ranks in terror. Their formation shattered, some scrambling for the tunnels. Others froze, paralyzed by awe and fear. Lyra grabbed Kaelen's arm. Kael, we can't. This place is going to collapse. He was trembling, the fragment burning like molten iron in his chest. It's inside me, too. Stone rained from above. Screams echoed. The vault was waking. Far above, at Polaris Academy, Cassian stood in the observatory. The stars outside were shifting. He smiled. Soon, he whispered, the sky itself will bow. Chapter 24. Shattered sky. The vault screamed. Stone split under Kaelen's boots, fissures spiderwebbing across the chamber floor as the zodiac disk cracked apart. Constellations once carved into rock now blazed in the air, living sigils that orbited madly. Wardens scattered in panic. Some tried to drag comrades toward the tunnels, others fled outright, their weapons clattering abandoned in the chaos. The commander bellowed orders that no one obeyed. Lyra pulled Kaelen by the arm, but he staggered against her, the fragment inside him searing like a star trying to claw free. His storm lashed uncontrollably, arcs of lightning slamming into walls and corpses alike. Kael, Lyra shouted, you have to shut it down. I can't. His voice broke, eyes wild. It's not mine to shut. From the fissure, the serpent moved. Not flesh, not stone. Something older. Its body was a string of stars torn from their proper places, twisted into a shape too large for the chamber, too vast for Kaelen's eyes to follow. Each coil pulsed with light that felt like hunger. Release! The word roared inside his skull, drowning out the warden's screams. Kaelen dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. The fragment pulsed in rhythm with the serpent's coils, as if it was a shard of this thing, as if he was already chained to it. Lyra knelt beside him, sword flashing, as she batted away a desperate warden who lunged in panic, blood sprayed, hot and close. Her voice was fierce, shaking with terror she refused to show. Kael, look at me. Listen. You are not it. You're not its chain. You're not its mouthpiece. You are you. Kaelen's storm howled, sparks tearing his words into gasps. It wants me to open. Then don't. Lyra pressed her forehead against his, anchoring him as the ground trembled. Make it wait. Make it suffer. You don't owe it anything. For a heartbeat, her words pierced the roar. The storm recoiled inward, not gone, but clenched tight in his veins, barely contained. The fissure's light dimmed slightly, enough for stone to grind closed again, sealing most of the serpent's body beneath. But not all. One coil of starlit flesh remained above ground, writhing violently, snapping through the chamber. It slammed into walls, sending shards of ruin crashing down. A warden was caught mid-scream, crushed instantly. Run! Lyra dragged Kaelen to his feet. The tunnels were collapsing. Dust and stone poured from the ceiling as they sprinted, vault light flickering at their heels. Wardens surged ahead of them, abandoning pursuit, desperate to escape. Kaelen and Lyra pushed through the chaos, storm shielding them from falling debris, Lyra's blade clearing any soldier foolish enough to bar their way. Behind them, the serpent's roar rattled the rock. The ruins shook themselves apart. They burst into night air at last, stumbling across broken ground. The ruins behind them were a collapsing maw, swallowing itself as the serpent's imprisoned form writhed below. Kaelen dropped to the dirt gasping, staring back in horror. The ruins were gone. The land itself had caved, a crater yawning wide, glowing faintly with imprisoned starlight. And from within the pit, the whisper still came, release. Far above, the stars shifted. Cassian stood on the high tower of Polaris Academy, his cloak snapping in the night wind. He looked east toward the faint glow of the crater and smiled. The chains weaken, he whispered. At last. Kaelen sat at the crater's edge, Lyra crouched beside him. His storm flickered weakly, exhausted, his body trembling with every pulse of the fragment inside. Lyra's voice was low, raw. Kael, if that thing ever breaks free, it will. His tone was flat, drained. He didn't meet her eyes. I couldn't stop it. Just slow it. She gripped his hand, fierce. Then we fight until we can, together. Kaelen turned, finally meeting her gaze. For a heartbeat, the storm within him stilled. But over their shoulders, the stars shifted again. Unnatural lines forming in the night sky, constellations bending. Not broken yet, but bending.
Another story ends, but the cozy never does. See you soon.